overwhelming the environment, creating a wall of sound so intense that even a top 25 player like Ostapenko looked visibly shaken. Some posts went further, exaggerating the moment into something dramatic, something emotional, something viral. But strip away the exaggeration, and one truth remains: the crowd mattered. It changed the feel of the match. Because Ostapenko is known for her power, her aggression, her ability to impose herself on any opponent. But in that moment, she wasn't just playing Eala, she was playing the room. And that's a completely different challenge. For Eala, it was fuel. For Ostapenko, it was friction. And when a match gets decided by margins, even a slight shift in energy can tilt everything.
Yes.
And she's humble, and she works hard.
Yes.
That's why we like her, you know, because she's the face of the Philippines.
Jelena Ostapenko won the match. That's what the scoreboard says. That's what the headlines repeat. But what actually unfolded inside the design center lens goes far deeper than a routine result. Because this wasn't just a comeback. It was a collision between a player and an atmosphere she didn't see coming. Mid-match, Ostapenko didn't just react to shots, she reacted to the crowd. She turned, pointed, called in officials, demanded attention be paid. That's not normal behavior for a player in control. That's a player feeling something shift outside the lines. And still, she won. That's what makes it complex. Because after navigating that storm, after closing out a match where momentum kept slipping and surging, she walked to the microphone, looked back at the same crowd that had been pulling against her, and said, "You helped me a lot today." Smiling. But not casually. There was weight behind it. Because what she experienced wasn't standard crowd noise, it was something closer to resistance. And that's where the mainstream narrative misses the mark. They'll call it composure. They'll call it experience. They'll call it a professional closing out a tough match. But they won't talk about the environment. They won't talk about what happens when Alex Eala brings with her a fanbase that doesn't just watch, but travels, organizes, and transforms a venue. Filipino fans don't just attend. They arrive with identity. And after that match ended, the energy didn't disappear with the final point. It lingered. It followed the result. It reframed it. Because in a strange way, even in defeat, Eala didn't leave the court alone. The atmosphere she carried stayed behind, and the winner had to walk through it. That's why calling it a routine win doesn't quite land. Because nothing about that night felt routine.
That the courts are full at home and just so many things that I didn't think.
Austria isn't known as a hub of Filipino culture. But on April 8, 2026, inside the design center lens, that reality flipped completely. For one night, that arena didn't feel European. It felt Filipino. Flags in the air. Voices echoing across the court. A community that had traveled thousands of miles, not for a vacation, not for a spectacle, but for one reason only, to stand behind Alex Eala. And that's what made this moment historic before a single ball was even struck. Because Eala didn't just enter the Linz Open as another player in the draw. She walked in as the first Filipino in history to compete in the tournament's main draw. That's not just participation. That's representation. That's a line being crossed for the first time. And when she stepped onto that court, she wasn't alone. She carried with her a presence that turned a neutral venue into something personal, a space claimed, even temporarily, by a community that showed up in numbers, in voice, and in belief.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be back. Can't wait to be out on court and I hope to see you there.
And then came the moment that changed the entire feel of the tournament. Because this wasn't just a crowd showing up, this was a takeover no one planned for. Inside the design center lens, the noise didn't rise gradually. It arrived all at once. Flags everywhere. Voices layered on top of each other. One chant cutting through everything, Laban Alex. In a city that had no expectation of this kind of energy, the arena transformed into something unrecognizable. And at the center of it all, Alex Eala. Before she even faced Jelena Ostapenko, before the tension and the headlines, she had already done something historic. Her first-round win over Julia Grabher, 6-4, 6-3, was more than just a result. It was control. She walked into a match against a home player, in front of what should have been a partisan Austrian crowd, and flipped the script completely. Calm under pressure. Sharp from the baseline. Composed in the big moments. But the most important part? It didn't feel like an away match. Because by the time the first ball was struck, the energy in that arena had already shifted. What should have been Grabher's home advantage, became Eala's stage. And that's when it became clear, this wasn't just a player entering a tournament. This was a movement arriving.
And not for the first time, almost beaten by the lack of pace on serve. So, victory.
That first round win didn't just change the scoreboard, it changed the entire atmosphere of the tournament. Because Julia Grabher was supposed to have the advantage. Home crowd. Home country. Familiar energy. But inside the design center lens, it didn't feel like that at all. The Filipino presence flipped everything. What should have been hostile territory turned into something else, something almost surreal, where Alex Eala looked more comfortable than the home player. And after closing it out 6-4, 6-3, she did something that made the moment even more powerful. She turned to the crowd and spoke to them in Tagalog. You could see it on her face. She didn't expect that many supporters. No one in that building did. And that's when it became undeniable. This wasn't normal crowd support. This was something organized, emotional, and deeply connected. That win didn't just send her into the next round. It set up a collision nobody could ignore. Waiting for her was Jelena Ostapenko, world number 23, French Open champion, former Linz title holder, a player built for big moments and high-pressure matches. And here's what made it even more intriguing: Eala already had the edge in their head-to-head. She had beaten Ostapenko in their only completed match and received a walkover in Eastbourne when Ostapenko retired. Officially, 2-0. Unofficially, still unfinished business. Even Ostapenko knew what was coming. When she saw the draw, her reaction said everything. This is a tough second round. And that wasn't media hype. That was a champion recognizing a problem before stepping onto the court. That one line from Jelena Ostapenko, "That's a tough second round," wasn't casual. It was recognition. Because seeded players don't talk like that unless something real sits behind it. And in this case, that something was Alex Eala, and everything she had already shown. When the match started, it followed a familiar script. At first, Eala came out composed, sharp, disciplined. She built a 4-2 lead in the opening set, controlling rallies, absorbing pace, forcing errors. Then the switch flipped. Ostapenko did what she does best: she went all in. For straight games. Set gone, 6-4. That's the risk and the power of her game. By the end of the match, 41 winners. That's not just aggression, that's relentless shot-making under pressure. But the second set? That's where the story changed completely. Eala didn't fade. She escalated. Early break. Another break. 4-0 lead. Suddenly, it wasn't Ostapenko dictating anymore. It was Eala controlling the tempo, redirecting pace, forcing the Latvian into uncomfortable positions. And then it became undeniable, 5-1. One game away from forcing a deciding third set. Inside the design center lens, the energy peaked. The Filipino crowd was at full volume. Every point Eala won felt amplified, multiplied, carried across the arena. In that moment, she wasn't chasing the match anymore. She was holding it. And then the match crossed a line, from competition into confrontation. At 1-4 down in the second set, Jelena Ostapenko didn't just react to the scoreboard, she reacted to the stands. She stopped play, turned, locked onto a section of the crowd. And then came the moment that changed the tone entirely: racket raised toward the stands. A direct challenge. "How you play? Come here now. Come play tennis." The broadcast picked it up clearly. No ambiguity. No misinterpretation. This wasn't frustration hidden behind body language. This was verbal, visible, undeniable. And it didn't end there. At the next changeover, she called in the official. Gave a description. Made her stance explicit: if it happens again, remove them. It's not normal. That's not something you hear often at this level. Because players deal with noise all the time. They deal with pressure. They deal with hostile environments. But this was different enough that it broke through her focus. And that's what makes this moment so important in understanding what followed. Because from that point forward, the match wasn't just about forehands and backhands anymore. It became about control: who could hold it, who could reset, who could block out everything happening beyond the baseline. For a few games, it looked like Alex Eala had that control completely. But tennis at this level is brutal. You don't just have to reach the moment, you have to close it. And this is where the story gets flipped completely, because what looked like disruption became ignition. Mainstream coverage will frame that moment as a distraction, something that should have derailed Jelena Ostapenko. But that's not what happened. The crowd didn't go quiet. They didn't back down. They didn't disappear. If anything, they stayed exactly the same, loud, present, fully behind Alex Eala. And that's the detail that changes everything. Because instead of breaking Ostapenko, it gave her something else. A target. A trigger. A reason to lock in beyond just the scoreline. From the moment she spoke to the official, something shifted in her body language. The frustration didn't vanish, it sharpened. And then the tennis changed. Completely. From 1-5 down in the second set, 6 straight games. No hesitation. No second guessing. The same player who had been leaking double faults suddenly started striking with full conviction, flat, aggressive, fearless. The kind of ball striking that once carried her to a French Open title. That's not coincidence. That's a player channeling emotion into execution. The noise that was supposed to work against her became fuel. And that's what makes this match so difficult to simplify. Because yes, Eala had control. Yes, she was one game away from forcing a third set. But at this level, control is fragile. Momentum doesn't just shift, it snaps. And once Ostapenko found that edge, she didn't give it back. Still, none of that takes away from what Eala did. Because she didn't collapse quietly. She didn't disappear from the match. She pushed a Grand Slam champion to the edge, on a surface that still isn't her strongest, with everything around her amplified to the highest level. That's not just effort. That's proof of level. Alex Eala didn't leave Linz with a win, but she left with something just as important, validation at the highest level. At 20 years old, with a career-high ranking of number 29 reached in March 2026, she's already the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA history. That alone puts her in uncharted territory. And on that court inside the design center Linz, she proved why. Because that scoreline, 6-4, 7-5 in favor of Jelena Ostapenko, doesn't tell the real story. It doesn't show the 5-1 lead. It doesn't show how close she was to forcing a third set. It doesn't show how one game, just one, separates a loss from a completely different narrative. And against a player with Ostapenko's firepower, those moments carry weight. Heavy weight. Because chances like that? They don't come easily. But here's what makes this different from a typical loss. When Eala walked off the court, her fans didn't. The Filipino crowd stayed. They didn't disappear with the result. They didn't quiet down and leave. They remained. Present. Visible. And Jelena Ostapenko noticed. Everyone did. Because that's not normal in professional tennis. Usually, the energy follows the winner. The noise shifts. The story moves on. But here, it didn't fully shift. The atmosphere lingered. And in that moment, something subtle but powerful happened, the match ended. But the presence didn't. And that's what separates Linz from a standard tennis story. It wasn't just about who won. It was about what remained after the final point. After the final point inside the design center Linz, the tone inside the arena shifted one last time. What had been tension moments earlier became something unexpectedly calm, almost reflective. Jelena Ostapenko stood in front of the same crowd she had confronted during the match. The same energy. The same noise. The same faces in the stands. But now, the expression was different. Not frustration. Not confrontation. Recognition. She spoke directly to them. First of all, guys, thank you so much. I have great memories from here. It's an amazing place to play. Thank you so much for coming. You helped me a lot today. And that's the moment that changed how the entire story would be remembered. Because it wasn't just a victory speech, it was a reversal of emotion in real time.